We're joined by Matt Towery, the founder of InsiderAdvantage. It's doing the polling exclusively for Fox 10 during this cycle. Matt, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
This poll is interesting because Kari Lake is starting to pull ahead of Katie Hobbs. What's happening?
Well, we had a relatively decent size undecided in our last poll. That's beginning to collapse a little bit. You're seeing the male vote in Arizona just go overwhelmingly for Lake. And you've seen a little bit of shifting from the various age groups. I'm not going to say it. No one should take this as meaning that Lake is going to win the race. You never know. This is just a snapshot in time, as pollsters always say. But I think it should be taken more as sort of a measure of momentum. And clearly, since our last poll in September, late September, Lake has gained some real momentum. And let me just add, we're seeing this in gubernatorial races around the country, in Florida, in Georgia, in Michigan, in Arizona. These races are, I don't know if they're forerunners to how the national races will turn out, or whether they're simply something to do with local politics, statewide politics. But we're seeing it in a lot of places, these Republican candidates surging in this last month.
Okay, so Matt, you're probably aware that Katie Hobbs, the Democrat here, refused to debate Kari Lake, and your poll was conducted Tuesday, so that's after all of that news broke. Right. Do you think that may be animating voters to say, you know, you got to fight for the job, to put it bluntly?
Well, it might be. In my old life, I was involved in politics and dealt with political debate. I've never been a believer that the debate issue changes races as much as I think some politicians and consultants do. That said, I think that it only adds to whatever else is going on in Arizona and maybe nationally that is moving someone like Lake ahead of Hobbs, or certainly very close to Hobbs, because we know before Hobbs was leading, and now this thing is basically flipping. So I feel like the debate is probably a good example or symbol of some of the problems that several of these Democratic gubernatorial candidates are running into around the country. So I don't think it's unique to Hobbs.
That's interesting because aside from the debate, it's the fact that Hobbs refused to debate, which might end up being more of a gift to Kari Lake than if they'd had a debate.
Yeah. I mean, if you're ahead, they always say, if you're ahead, be quiet and enjoy it. I think that I know there's been a lot of tension and a lot of news in the last 24 hours having to do with these issues as well. They're not serving Hobbs in any positive way, I can tell you that. But I'm not sure that's going to be the determining factor. There's something else, and I'm not on the ground in Arizona day to day. There's something else that are moving these voters, because this is sort of a crystallizing moment in which momentum begins to really start to gain. Now, whether it will stay that way, we got almost a month to go, a little less than that. So anything could happen. And campaigns on the other side, whenever they're the losing side, oh, the pollster's terrible. What the truth is, we're just taking a snapshot in time. There are weeks to go in this thing. Changes could take place, but I like to think of this poll as a momentum poll. It clearly shows that Lake has the momentum.
One more thing here before we move on to the Senate race. The abortion issue here is also apparently animating voters. I know you don't drill down on individual issues because you feel that sometimes when you get into that, it contaminates the poll.
Right. I don't. My view is, anytime you see a poll, A, if it has too many questions, people are going to get tired. B, if it asks questions about issues either before or after you've done the horse race where we do the ballot test, people have already formed their opinions. And then you're not going to get any kind of accurate read on the issues or on the candidates, depending on which one you put first. So you really just want to leave a horse race by itself. And then if you want to drill into the issues, do another poll. And unfortunately, we're polling for Fox affiliates all over the country, so I can't get into these issues in every state. I will tell you, abortion is certainly a turnout issue for the Democrats. I'm not finding it to be as strong of an issue as I expected it to be, but it certainly is a turnout factor. And it also shows why, for example, in this race, Hobbs is doing better with women than Lake is.
Yes, that's very interesting. Undecided's in that race now at 4%. Nobody's cracked 50%, and I'm going to ask you about that later. U.S. Senate race. It seems that Mark Kelly's still has some distance on Blake Masters. Is that tightening, or is the independent in the race causing or the libertarian, Mark Victor, is that causing Blake Masters a ceiling problem? He can't seem to get through because of that.
You put it perfectly. The race is definitely tightening. I mean, Kelly hasn't gained much, and Masters has gained points since the last time we polled. He has some momentum on his side. But if the Libertarian stays at the level that the Libertarians at this moment,
which is 5%,
around 5%, it would be very hard for Masters to pull this off. If I were the Masters campaign, half of my campaign, I'd be running against the Libertarian. Because you've got to get that guy down.
That's an ad I have not seen. I've seen a lot of ads, but I haven't seen that ad.
I don't know what these campaign consultants think, but you've got two opponents in the race, and if one's taking 5% out, that's probably what I'd be looking at. You can bet Mark Kelly is thrilled to death to see that Libertarian doing well.
That is so interesting. Okay, undecideds on that one are more than in the governor's race, 7%.
Yeah, and that's where Masters has his chance. He's got some momentum going. And I think I said in my wrap up of this online that if the undecideds break in Masters' favor and the Libertarian comes down a bit, then once again, you could see another Senate race. And again, we're seeing this around the country. For whatever reason, we had about a month ago a shift nationally. We started seeing these Republican candidates, whether they were, and Masters has not been well funded. He's not been supported by Mitch McConnell. He's been handicapped a lot in this race. But even without all of that, now all of a sudden you've got this shift nationally in these gubernatorial races first, and then the senatorial races, and the congressional races are pretty much set. So we're seeing that take place. Now the question is, will it last? Because we know there are all kinds of October surprises possible out there, and anything can happen.
How much is Joe Biden affecting the Democratic candidates? Because you polled him as well, and it's not very good in Arizona.
No, in fact, he's going down in Arizona. I would say this. I don't think you are I don't know Mark Kelly at all, but I think my guess is he's not mentioning Joe Biden very much.
He's not.
Because that would be catastrophic.
Only to say that he's bucked Biden on the border and that he's pushing Biden on energy production.
Right. Well, he's smart to do that because Biden's numbers are deteriorating. Not as much. You got to remember, nationally, they've deteriorated a bit. But when you do a national poll, we do that for Real Clear Politics. You're including California, New York, some really big states that are completely Democrat. When you get to these battleground states like Florida, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Biden's numbers are deteriorating very quickly, and they weren't strong in the first place. So Kelly's wise to stay away from President Biden in this reelection effort.
Yeah, Joe Biden is at disapproval in Arizona at 58%, approval 41%. For any Democrat, that's a tough climate. You know, the candidates, whoever's going to win here, is going to claim, 41%. For any Democrat, that's a tough climate. You know, the candidates, whoever's going to win here, is going to claim, overwhelming support. The fact is, none of these candidates in the governor race or the Senate race crack 50%.
Right. Well, we're also seeing that everywhere in the country. You and I both know that this is a very polarized nation, and it's very hard to get to 50% for anyone. There are some states like Georgia where you have to get to 50% or you have to have a runoff.
Well, we used to have that here in Arizona when Evan Meacham won the governorship.
I remember.
Back in the mid-'80s, it was called 50+1, and they got rid of it. He won in a three-way race, and everybody went crazy. And he was
exactly right. And, Georgia still has it, and one other state, Louisiana, has it. But other states have gotten rid of it. And that's probably a good thing for all of these politicians, or we would all be having a holly jolly Christmas watching everyone in a runoff around the country.
All right, Matt, one more thing. You're going to do some more polling as we head down the stretch. Yes. How much can things change in, what are we at, a few weeks now, 3 weeks?
Yeah, they can. I've seen races where you get momentum going and it just never moves, never changes, keeps going. I've seen races where an issue will change everything, And of course, there's that great turnout issue that candidates always talk about, but it has a lot to do with finally who actually wins a race, particularly in midterms, because you don't have that giant push that a presidential election has. So a lot can change. Nothing's set in stone, particularly 3 weeks out. When you get about a week out, it gets harder and harder to move numbers.
One more thing I have to ask you before we go.
Sure.
There's been a lot of discussion that it's becoming increasingly difficult to poll Republican voters who they call still shy Trump voters who do not want to spill their guts to a stranger on a telephone or on the internet. Do you believe that's real? And is it getting harder to get Republicans to respond?
Well, I believe it's real, although I think we and some other pollsters have found ways to get around that because we certainly captured it more in 2020 and 2016. That said, it's getting harder, John, to poll anyone. No one wants to talk about politics. They're scared to death. They think they're going to make people mad. They don't want anybody to know what they're doing. They feel like they're going to be attacked. This is becoming a very difficult business, and it's only going to get harder.
Are you guys on trial as well? I'm talking about the pollsters collectively. Are you guys on trial in this election?
Well, literally, I hope not. But in terms of this, yes, Real Clear Politics announced today that they are going to rank every pollster in this country. They are the gold standard, as you know, for polling.
Yes.
And we're going to find out what their verdict is at some point. I've done well in the past. I don't know what it'll be. Let's hope it's good. And they're actually going to rank us before the election, is what I read today online.
Oh, wow.
Which means I have to hold my breath.
How did they rank you before the election?
Well, they're going to, I think, rank us on our prior performances in 2018 and 20, which we were pretty accurate. So I'm not too concerned. And plus, whether it's an A or an F, you're only as good as your next poll.
Matt Towery, great to see you. You're in a tough business, my friend. I appreciate your time.
Right. Well, I thought I was retired.
No, there's no such thing anymore.
Thank
you,
Thanks
Matt.
so much.
Great stuff.
Thank you.